When we think of medieval peasants, many of us imagine lives filled with relentless drudgery and hardship. But what was daily life truly like for these rural inhabitants of medieval Europe? From dawn to dusk, what did they really spend their days doing, thinking, and feeling? This video dives into the actual routines, chores, leisure moments, and struggles of medieval peasants. Far from just toiling in misery, their lives were richly woven with work, community, and occasional joy. Join us as we peel back the layers of myths and explore the fascinating realities of peasant life. Morning. Before the first light. For medieval peasants, the day began long before sunrise. In the quiet darkness of early morning, the first chore was often rekindling the hearth from embers kept alive through the night. Fire was the heart of the household, providing warmth, cooking, and light. Maintaining it was essential, painstakingly done with dry kindling and patience. Next came the morning prayer. Religion deeply structured medieval life, and peasants started their days with a few whispered prayers, or perhaps a communal blessing if they lived near a monastery or village church. These brief moments of devotion were crucial, offering strength and comfort before the day's labor. Breakfast was modest, usually leftover bread from the previous evening, perhaps paired with a weak ale or some watered-down milk. It wasn't a leisurely meal, often eaten while standing or preparing for the day ahead. Time was precious, and the morning's first hours were critical for getting a head start on daily tasks. While adults prepared for heavy labor, children had their own responsibilities. They might gather eggs, fetch water from the well, or herd animals to pasture. Even the youngest family members contributed to survival, their small tasks easing the workload for parents. Working the fields, the heartbeat of peasant life. By sunrise, peasants were already hard at work in the fields. Farming dictated the rhythm of their lives, with tasks changing dramatically with each season. Spring was planting time, with men and women bending over furrows, carefully placing seeds by hand, using basic tools like hoes and wooden plows. This was grueling work, often lasting until mid-afternoon without significant breaks. Summer brought the exhausting harvest season. Whole communities came together to reap crops like barley, oats, and wheat. Days were long, hot, and intense, as timing was crucial to ensure the harvest was completed before rains or frost damaged the crops. Despite the hard labor, harvest was a communal event, bringing neighbors together with shared purpose and camaraderie. In autumn, peasants prepared for winter by storing crops, preserving food, and repairing homes. Winter was quieter, but still demanding. It was the time for threshing grain, mending tools, and caring for animals sheltered from the harsh weather. Every season had its demands, and peasants adapted their workload accordingly. Throughout the day, short breaks for food and rest were taken in the fields. Lunch typically consisted of bread, cheese, and ale, eaten quickly to maximize daylight. Rest breaks weren't leisurely, but vital pauses that allowed the body to recover just enough for work to continue. Home and hearth, the hub of peasant life. After many exhausting hours in the fields, peasants returned home to another set of demanding tasks. Maintaining their modest homes was crucial to survival, requiring daily attention and care. Houses, typically one-room structures made of wattle and daub with thatched roofs, needed regular upkeep to stay weatherproof. Men and women both took part in patching roofs, repairing walls, and securing doors and shutters. Inside, women generally took charge of food preparation. Meals were simple, yet nourishing, made from whatever was in season or preserved from previous harvests. Vegetables from small gardens, grains, and occasional meat or fish were cooked over open hearths. Baking bread was a constant task, an essential staple in the peasant diet. Dough was kneaded and shaped every day, the aroma filling the home with warmth and comfort. Chores, such as spinning wool, weaving, and sewing clothing occupied many of the evening hours. Clothes were valuable and rarely replaced. Instead, they were patched repeatedly until completely worn out. Men would often spend their evenings carving or repairing tools and equipment, ensuring everything was ready for the next day's work. Family time, although often brief, was cherished. Stories were shared, news exchanged, and occasionally songs sung or games played around the fire. These moments strengthened family bonds, offering emotional respite from the relentless demands of survival. Community life, a shared responsibility for medieval peasants, community was more than just neighbors. It was an essential support network. Villages operated as cohesive units, cooperating to meet the challenges of survival. Common lands were used for grazing animals, forests provided wood and game, and streams or communal wells supplied water. Villagers collectively managed these resources to prevent overuse and ensure fairness. Peasant life was punctuated by communal tasks such as haymaking, harvesting, and maintaining shared infrastructure like roads and bridges. Everyone was expected to contribute. Participation was not merely social, it was a moral obligation. Refusal could lead to fines or ostracization, consequences far too severe in such interdependent societies. Festivals and religious holidays provided vital breaks from routine. Events like May Day, harvest celebrations, and village fairs brought everyone together for singing, dancing, feasting, and games. These occasions were not just entertainment. They reinforced social cohesion and allowed peasants to momentarily forget their hardships. The local parish church was the heart of spiritual life, but also a place for practical meetings and announcements. Churchyards served as gathering spots where villagers exchanged news, settled disputes, or organized collective tasks. Religious devotion bound the community, providing comfort and a sense of shared destiny. Hardships and resilience, surviving the medieval world. Life as a medieval peasant wasn't merely tough, it was precarious. Disease, famine, and war regularly threatened their fragile existence. Epidemics like the Black Death could sweep away entire villages within weeks, leaving survivors with unimaginable grief and increased burdens of work. Yet even during such bleak periods, peasants showed extraordinary resilience. They employed various strategies to mitigate disasters. Crop diversification protected against total failure if one crop succumbed to pests or harsh weather. Storing grain surpluses during good harvests provided insurance against years of scarcity. Communities banded together to support widows, orphans, and families who had lost breadwinners, sharing food, resources, and labor when most needed. Despite these precautions, peasants often endured chronic malnutrition, especially during late winter and early spring. Food shortages became routine as winter reserves dwindled. Hunger was a persistent companion, driving many to forage in forests for wild berries, mushrooms, and herbs. Even in relatively prosperous times, meat consumption was rare, typically limited to special occasions or feasts. Additionally, the medieval landscape was fraught with external dangers. Marauding armies, bandits, and oppressive landlords could disrupt peasant lives dramatically. Peasants navigated these threats with cautious diplomacy and occasionally resistance, always balancing survival with maintaining good standing among local nobility or church authorities. Women's roles, the backbone of peasant life. Women in medieval peasant communities shouldered immense responsibilities. In addition to working alongside men in the fields, they were the primary caregivers, household managers, and essential providers of daily necessities like clothing and food. Women's work was continuous, beginning before dawn and often extending late into the night. Managing a household meant juggling multiple tasks simultaneously. Women churned butter, made cheese, brewed ale, baked bread, and preserved foods for winter. Their expertise in herbal medicine was crucial, often serving as healers and midwives. Knowledge of plants for medicinal purposes was handed down through generations, making women respected figures within their communities. Women also participated heavily in agriculture. From planting and harvesting to tending gardens and animals, their contributions were indispensable. It was common to see women working the plow alongside their husbands or older sons. Young children often accompanied mothers in their daily tasks, learning crucial skills from an early age. Despite their crucial roles, women had fewer rights. Inheritance typically favored male relatives, and marriage was more of an economic arrangement than a personal choice. Yet within these constraints, peasant women found agency, often managing household finances and decision-making in their husbands' absences due to war, trade, or other obligations. Children and family life. Growing up. Quickly. Childhood for medieval peasants was brief and practical. From an early age, children were considered valuable contributors to family survival, learning skills essential to rural life almost as soon as they could walk. Toddlers gathered sticks or fed small animals, while slightly older children managed more substantial tasks like fetching water, weeding gardens, or herding livestock. Formal education was practically non-existent for peasants. Instead, learning took place informally through direct observation and hands-on experience. Skills such as farming, weaving, cooking, and animal care were taught by parents or community elders. Children absorbed crucial knowledge not through books, but by imitation and necessity, quickly developing practical intelligence tailored to their environment. Adolescence, as we understand it today, was virtually absent. By their early teens, children were seen as adults, expected to fully participate in strenuous labor and household duties. Girls married young, typically between 14 and 17, and boys often began their apprenticeships or took on adult roles by similar ages. Early marriage and parenthood ensured the continuation of families and provided additional hands to manage work. Yet, despite these heavy responsibilities, children still found moments of play. Simple games like hide-and-seek, tag, or races provided entertainment, while homemade toys such as wooden dolls, balls, and carved animals offered brief escapes from their demanding daily routines. Childhood was short, but not entirely joyless. Crafts and trades, beyond farming. Though predominantly agricultural, peasant communities often engaged in various crafts and trades. Specialization was limited, yet villagers typically possessed diverse skills to meet local needs. Blacksmithing, carpentry, pottery, weaving, and basket-making were common crafts practiced within peasant villages. These skills offered peasants supplementary income and goods for barter, providing a small measure of economic security beyond farming. Craft work was often seasonal or performed during periods when agricultural labor slowed. Winters allowed time for repairing tools, making clothing, crafting furniture, or weaving baskets. The ability to produce household necessities was invaluable, reducing dependence on distant markets and protecting families from market fluctuations or poor harvests. Trades were typically passed down through generations, often within families. Fathers taught their sons carpentry and metalwork, while mothers instructed daughters in textile crafts and food preservation. Knowledge transfer was deeply personal, preserving local traditions and techniques that varied significantly from village to village. Peasant artisans occasionally traveled to nearby markets or fairs to sell surplus goods, creating opportunities for social interaction and economic exchange. These excursions not only provided additional income, but also allowed villagers to exchange ideas, news, and innovations from outside their isolated communities, enriching village life culturally and economically. Leisure and entertainment. Simple pleasures in peasant life. Although peasant life was demanding, it wasn't devoid of enjoyment. Leisure moments, while limited, were cherished and eagerly anticipated. After a hard day's labor, peasants found pleasure in simple activities such as storytelling, singing songs, or gathering around a neighbor's hearth to exchange news and gossip. Music, often played on homemade instruments like flutes, drums, or simple string instruments, provided both entertainment and a sense of cultural identity. Festivals and celebrations played a critical role in breaking the monotony of daily life. Events marking the agricultural calendar, such as planting, harvest, or midwinter feasts, allowed peasants brief respites filled with dancing, feasting, and communal joy. Religious holidays like Christmas, Easter, and various saints' days were widely celebrated with processions, fairs, and communal meals. Even weddings and baptisms became village-wide events, bringing neighbors together in collective celebration. Games and sports provided additional leisure opportunities. Wrestling, foot races, archery contests, and early forms of football brought excitement and friendly competition. While these activities were simple and required minimal equipment, they strengthened community bonds and relieved daily stress. Nightfall. Rest and reflection. As the daylight faded, the rhythm of peasant life slowed. After completing evening chores, families gathered indoors around the hearth, the home's warm and comforting heart. The evening meal, typically consisting of stew or porridge, bread, and perhaps some preserved vegetables, was eaten in relative quiet, reflecting the day's fatigue. Nighttime was not always peaceful, however. Homes were small, often crowded, and privacy minimal. Families slept on straw mattresses, sharing beds for warmth. In winter, animals might even be brought indoors to provide additional heat, making sleep conditions cramped and uncomfortable. Yet, exhaustion ensured that sleep came quickly and deeply. Before sleep, it was customary for peasants to reflect spiritually. Prayers of thanks or requests for divine protection provided comfort and hope. For peasants living uncertain lives, faith was a critical source of resilience, offering emotional support and a sense of meaning amidst daily challenges. Legacy and historical perspective. Reconsidering peasant life. When looking back at medieval peasants, it's easy to focus solely on their hardships, but their lives offer profound lessons in resilience, community, and adaptation. Far from being mere victims of history, peasants actively shaped their environments, communities, and futures through sheer determination and collective action. Today, their lives remind us of the strength found in community bonds, the ingenuity of human adaptability, and the joy available in simple pleasures. Peasants weren't passive observers of their fate. They were skilled, resourceful people who managed not just to survive, but to find moments of joy and meaning in the harshest of circumstances. Understanding their routines and experiences enriches our perspective, teaching valuable lessons about sustainable living, community reliance, and appreciation for life's basic necessities. Lessons that remain surprisingly relevant in our modern world. What aspect of medieval peasant life surprised you most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating glimpses into history.